Mind Over Matter, where we explore the unseen battles and the strength it takes to rise. Today, we meet Damian Bloss, a man who didn't look like an addict, didn't lose everything on paper, but lost the most vital piece himself. After 2 decades of numbing the pain of unresolved grief with alcohol, Damien found his way back through rehab, sobriety, self reclamation, and now by mentoring others. His story is not just one of recovery, it's one of radical ownership, healing, and transformation. Welcome to the show, Damien. It's an honor to have you.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Mhm. So, Damien, you speak of looking like someone who shouldn't have struggled with addiction. Why do you think society still stereotypes addiction, and how does that harm those silently suffering?
Yeah. So society as a whole, I feel has this stereotypical look of what an addict, alcoholic addict, whatever you want to call it, is. And it is always portrayed as that disheveled person, rough looking standing on the corner begging for change for their next fix or outside of a liquor store or something along those lines. And the thing is that with that, um, not everyone started out that way. It grew into that, but most people are, you know, your everyday person that you walk by on the street or, in a mall or a grocery store or even sit next to at church. You know, when people always say, you didn't look like an addict. And I'm like, there is no look to it. We battle from the inside, and that's something that the outside world can't see. So that is the whole thing about that. Like, none of us have that actual look. So I like whenever I hear that, I try to educate, and let them know like that's not what it is. That's what society portrays and you see in movies and things like that, but they don't always first look like that.
Definitely. And what would you say to someone who's functioning on the outside but breaking on the inside?
Mm. That's very deep because that's exactly how I was. So um, wanting to hide that persona from others and you know, because of the shame and because of the judgments that we feel that will be um, you know, that people are going to judge us and people are going to say, ew, I don't want to speak with that person. I don't want people to think that I'm like that. Um, what I would tell others is that, you're not alone. Even though you're going to feel that you are. And I remember feeling like that. As many people that I had in my life, I still felt alone. And what the addiction does to you is it makes you isolate even more, to where you feel like there is no hope for you. But I'm here to tell you that there is hope. There is a way out of that life, and it's just being able to admit that I am defeated at this moment and I need some help. And that's the hardest thing to do. That's the hardest thing for anyone to do is to ask for help because we will live with what are they thinking of me? Are they judging me? Are they looking at me different? Is their help that they're offering even genuine? It starts to give us this imposter syndrome and things like that, and it can feel very lonely at times. But again, I'm here to tell you that it is you are not alone, and I promise you that.
Sometimes the mask of having it together is the heaviest one to wear.
Mm, absolutely. Um, because we feel like we have to when someone asks us, are you okay? And this can go for anything whether you're an addict or not, or you're just fighting mental health issues as well. When someone asks us, are we okay? Our first thing to say is, I'm fine. And the reason behind that, for most of it, and I can speak, on behalf of myself, was that I didn't want to get into that story. I didn't want to get into having to explain why I'm not. Are you even asking out of curiosity? Are you asking because you genuinely want to help me? Or are you just trying to, is that a good way to start off a conversation? Um, so wearing all these different masks is very exhausting, and it will deteriorate your mental health as well. If you, mental health and addiction, they go kind of hand in hand. Some fight the mental illness by using, whether it be drugs or alcohol. So when we have to put on these masks, it's very exhausting because we have to put on the one that's happy for those times when we don't want to talk about it. We want to, when we do feel like we want to let a little bit out, we have to put our real sad face on and hope that I can just let a little bit out. And maybe they'll ask more. Maybe I can feel that to where I can actually add more to it. So it's very, very exhausting to go through that.
100%. And the loss of a loved one to suicide was the ignition point. How did carrying that secret shape your path into addiction?
Mm. So that actually, yeah, that's exactly what led to my addiction. And it's not an excuse. Like, I don't blame that person, but um, what it was is that I was, he would confide in me about this. Like, he wanted to end his life and things like that. But he would pass it off as a joke. And, I was 18, 19 years old at that time, and I'd never experienced anything like that before. So I didn't know how to handle it. And so he would talk about it in passing, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where it seems like when I look back now, that he was giving a little bit of information just to see how far I could take it, or how far I would go to where I would let him confide more in me. Um, but he would pass it off as a joke. So then I would joke about it. And, the only thing that he ever told me was, don't tell anybody about this. And when he actually did it, um, I was left with this information that I had, that now I'm thinking I could have saved his life. He would have still be here had I spoken up about it. Um, and that guilt followed me for about 20 years, because I was never able to talk about it. When it did happen, our family, we weren't equipped for this, and nobody knew what to do. So everybody's saying, could it have been because so and so said this to them, or so and so did that, or could it have been this and this? So at that point, when I felt people were blaming each other, I had nothing to do but to hold that information in, because I didn't want to be blamed, when I had the in my mind, I had the power to be able to stop it from happening. And so I used alcohol to suppress all of that guilt, all of those emotions, in order for me to get through that day. And it developed a habit. And then it just snowballed from there, you know, being in trouble with the law and things like that. And finally got me to a point to where I'm losing myself now, after 20 years of doing this. I'm losing myself. I'm no longer drinking to have fun, or, because I like the person I am when I'm drunk, drinking, or anything. I'm drinking to survive. And it wasn't until the time I got to where I wanted to take my own life, is when that was my rock bottom, because I saw what it did to other family members, and I didn't want to put my family through that. And plus, that wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was the addiction telling me, you have no way out of this. The only way is to do it this way. And, I started thinking, and I didn't want to die. And, after a few bouts with trying to get sober in the past and it not working, the addiction was trying to tell me that this was your only outlet. And until I looked at it and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be here. And I checked myself into a rehab facility.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Mm.
And when did the silence around that pain finally begin to break open for you?
It was about 5 years ago. Um, when I checked myself into rehab, I started to feel very different about myself. I started to feel different about how I want to live and how I want to continue with this life and be sober. I want to be normal or my normal. I want to be able to raise my family and things like that. So about 5 years ago, um, when I was released from rehab, I wanted to help others, and I wanted to. The only way that I could do that is if I did not struggle in silence anymore, because I did that for so long. I never told anybody about my addictions or things like that. People would realize that I was going through some things, but I was never open about it. And I wasn't open about it because deep down, if I would have been open about it, then when I would say relapse or just not quit at all, I didn't have to explain why I'm still drinking and things like that. So, my first thing getting out of rehab was, I need to work on myself. I need to not just be sober. The biggest thing for me is to be sober, but also work on my character defects and work on who I am as a person. I have to relearn who I am first. So in the process of doing that, I'm starting to, speak out about my recovery and what I had been through. Um, and I had to hold myself accountable, and that was the biggest thing that I realized with speaking out about my addiction was that it's also holding me accountable. And accountability in recovery is so huge, um, because it tends to help you along with in case you relapse or things like that. You know how to, because I was a compulsive liar as well. I would lie about so many things. So I had to start learning how to tell the truth, and things like that. So when, when I really got down into it, I started mentoring others. I have a partnership with my local police department and detention center, and I mentor inmates up there. I have my own group now that I run for mental health and addiction for others who don't know if they have an outlet who is really going to actually listen to them. So I run that every week. And I wrote my book. That was the biggest thing because I wanted to reach others outside of my community. And the best thing to do that was to write my book. There are others who are out there struggling just like I was. And, I wanted to help them as well. And the best way to do that was to write my book. And I couldn't be more proud of that. And it wasn't in my cards at all to write a book. So it has helped tremendously, and I love everybody that I come in contact with that share their story with me because that's a big step. That's a big courageous step that they got to take as well.
Yeah, and grief has a way of haunting us until we make a space for it to be heard.
Mm. Yeah, the grieving process. There really is no time frame for how long that we should grieve. But the best thing to do is that we need to be open about that. We need to open those lines of communication with someone we trust, so that, you know, while yes, we're grieving alone, we need to also bring others into that, that we trust, that we can talk with. When we have those moments where it's like the whole world is on our shoulders and everything just feels so heavy, I don't know what to do. We need to have that open line of communication, whether that be a trusted friend, a sponsor, a mentor, a therapist. And I've learned going through this process that trauma therapy helped me tremendously. It got to the root of my problem, which was the trauma. It was everything I was holding in from when I was 18, 19 years old, from my family member committing suicide. Everything was able to be brought up and I was in a safe environment and able to do so. So I strongly recommend, if you have anything like that, trauma is the number one trigger um, for addiction and things like that. So mental health issues as well. Um, so I 100% think that trauma therapy should be utilized.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you have now been sober for 5 years. What was the turning point that made you finally choose healing over hiding?
Mm. Yeah, it was going back to when I wanted to take my own life, when the addiction was like, this is your only way out of this. Um, you've tried rehab, you tried meetings, and you've tried outpatient treatment, and you did little stints in jail and things like that because of your addiction. Clearly, this is the only way. And it was at that point when I realized, and I had some help realizing that as well. When I was ready to do this, I was in the process of letting my wife know that, today I'm not going to be able to pick up the kids. You're going to have to do it because I'm not going to be here. And having mistakenly calling this pastor, I had his number in my phone, and I had his number because my dad was at his wit's end. He didn't know what to do, and he gave me this phone number of this pastor few months before, and I just kept his number. I never called him, but mistakenly, I called him that day, and I didn't know what to do, and the phone was ringing. I froze, and he answers the phone, and all I could do was break down to him. And we sat and we talked. He asked me to meet at this coffee shop. We talked, and that was the day that I first prayed for the very first time in my life. I didn't even know how to pray, and he asked me to do that, and that was the turning point for me, just completely wanting this so badly that I was willing to do anything. And after our meeting is the day as soon as I left from meeting with him, I went home and contacted the local treatment center. It's called Ashley Treatment Center, and was and I scheduled me for intake to, start my recovery process. So yeah, that was the breaking point for me, is when I no longer wanted to be here because I knew that was not who I was.
That's amazing. And what internal narrative had to die for your recovery to begin?
Yeah. um. So I had to completely give in, um, and I had to finally say I've had enough. Um, having these thoughts that I've never had before, and having these moments of awakening that I never had before. I just had to completely give it all to, you know, to be able to just let go and just say, you know what, this isn't what I want to do. I don't want to be in this. I don't want to live in addiction anymore. I don't want to um, be depressed all the time. I just want to live. Even though this addiction is telling me I don't want to live, I myself, as Damien, want to live. And I had to just basically give it away, and give it to this program and see what happens and give it my all this time. I like I said before, I had done treatment before and I just went through the motions. Um, but this time was going to have to be different. This was going to be it. This is everything that I had to go through. I had to go through like my life depended on it because it literally did depend on it. So giving everything to the program and working it the way I needed to work it in order to get better.
Mm-hmm. And sobriety often starts with letting go of a version of ourselves that was just trying to survive.
Mm. Yeah. So when I was drinking and things like that, I it turned me into this person that I started to like, and I started to forget about those emotions that I was trying to suppress before. And it turned me into this person that I absolutely loved because by nature I was very introverted. I was very shy, and alcohol was able to bring out a different side of me. And you know that worked for a little bit, um, and until it stopped working, until it had a hold of me where I was just not able to have fun anymore. It was just drinking to survive. I had to survive. I had to drink in order to survive, meaning I had to drink in order to cure the symptoms of withdrawal, or I couldn't go very long periods without it. I couldn't work without it. I couldn't live regular life without it because it had such a hold on me that if I did not have anything in my system, I would go through complete withdrawal, and it was horrible. I had to have it. So when I say I was drinking to survive, I was literally drinking to survive. That little bit of alcohol would cure those symptoms, and I was no longer getting drunk, and I was no longer like, partying. It was just to feel normal again.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And you now speak at jails, rehab, and even churches. How has sharing your story with others helped you heal?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because being able to speak out about what I've gone through and things like that, it helps me to never forget where I came from and where I can end up again if I pick up again. And I think that's the biggest thing that helps me. This whole recovery is give and take, where I'm able to give back, but in turn, it's also helping me. It's helping me stay accountable. It's helping me, um, you know, be able to share out loud the very deep and dark secrets that I held on to for so long in silence. So I'm able to let these feelings out. So basically, it's like every time I get to share, I look at it almost as if it's me sharing to my therapist that I was with, that helped me along for so many years. Um, it helps me to just remember what it was like. And because I never want to forget that. I always like to talk about what I do in recovery and things like that a lot more than my actual story. Although I do like to get into my story because it flows better, but it also helps me to never forget where I came from because if I ever forget where I came from, who knows how long it'll be before I go back there.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And how does it feel to hear your own words echo back in others' pain and transformation?
Yeah. When others, when you say that, you're talking about when others tell me their story.
Yeah. Mm, Mainly, I meant how when you speak at jail and rehabs.
Mhm. Okay. So yeah, when I'm able to speak, you know, it's in the jails and the rehabs, I see myself in every one of them, no matter what their story is. Um, and I like to tell them that, especially the ones that are in jail for, um, for drug and alcohol offenses, that their jumpsuit doesn't define who they are, and the ones in rehab, where they're sitting at in that chair doesn't define who they are, um, as long as they're able to let those emotions out. And another, uh, another thing too is that they're not going to be there forever. They don't have to stay where they are. And I like to remind them that, because when you're in a certain place, and I remember feeling like this as well, that when I was in, especially in rehab, I felt like nothing is going to be the same. Meaning, I don't know how I'm going to function. I feel like the time just stops when I was in there, and you always feel like the road is so long, and the thing is about it is that recovery, there is no finish line. So we don't have to rush through this. We don't have to wait. Um, you don't have to hurry up and get sober tomorrow and be 10 years sober tomorrow. This is a growing process. And it's so important to remember that, because as humans, our natural instinct is to have instant gratification, and it's not going to be that. And that is the main thing that we have to learn, is that we all want to get sober and have 10 years sober tomorrow, and that's just not going to happen. But if we are sober right now and we can stay sober today, that's all that we need to remember. Tomorrow is going to come when tomorrow comes. The next couple minutes are going to come when those next couple minutes come. But if you're sober right now and you've started this journey, that is where it matters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's where storytelling becomes sacred. It turns wounds into wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. So, thank you, Damien, for bringing your unfiltered truth and reminding us that healing doesn't come from looking perfect, it comes from finally looking within. And to anyone listening who feels like they're drowning in silence, your story isn't over, it's just waiting for you to start telling the truth. You're not alone. Not now,